There's a question so obvious that almost nobody actually asks it. You've cracked thousands of eggs into a pan without a second thought, but have you ever wondered why it's always the same egg? Chicken eggs. Every time. Not duck, not quail, not turtle, not the thousands of other species on Earth that also lay eggs. Out of every egg-laying animal that has ever existed, humanity settled on one bird from one family and built an entire global food system around it. So here's the question that should bother you a little. Can you actually eat other animals' eggs? Or did we just never try? Biologically, an egg is a pretty simple package. Protein, fat, water, and a developing embryo wrapped in a shell built to protect it until it's ready to hatch. That basic structure holds true, whether you're talking about a chicken, a shark, or a spider, which means technically most eggs are edible. Humans already eat far more than just chicken eggs. We just don't think about it that way. Duck eggs are eaten across parts of Asia and Europe, richer, larger, and higher in fat than chicken eggs. Quail eggs show up as delicacies worldwide, tiny, speckled, and surprisingly nutrient-dense. Ostrich eggs are eaten in parts of Africa. One single egg can replace roughly 2 dozen chicken eggs. Fish eggs, what you'd call roe, or caviar, are eaten constantly, often at a premium price. So are some insect eggs. In cultures across Mexico and Southeast Asia, where ant larvae and eggs are harvested and sold as a genuine delicacy, not a survival food. The pattern breaks the assumption fast. Edible eggs was never just about chickens. It was about which eggs out of thousands of species humans happened to domesticate, farm, and normalize. But that raises the real question. If the structure is basically the same, why doesn't every species' eggs end up on a plate? This is where it gets more complicated than most people expect. Some eggs are dangerous not because of the egg itself, but because of what the parent species carries. Reptile eggs, like those from certain snakes and lizards, can carry higher loads of salmonella, bacteria that thrives in a reptile's lower body temperature, in a way it doesn't in warm-blooded birds. Cook them properly, and the risk mostly disappears. But raw or undercooked, they're a genuine hazard, which is part of why they never became a mainstream food source. Some amphibian eggs are worse. Certain frog and toad species lay eggs coated in the same toxins their skin produces, a chemical defense meant to stop exactly this kind of predation. Eat the wrong species, and the egg fights back. Even within birds, the danger isn't uniform. Some seabirds lay eggs that absorb heavy metals from the fish they eat, concentrating mercury and lead at levels that build up over a lifetime of consumption. The shell looks identical, the risk is invisible. Then there's a factor that has nothing to do with danger at all. Practicality. A single ostrich egg takes about 90 minutes to hard boil. Sea turtle eggs have a leathery, almost rubbery texture that most people find genuinely unpleasant. Many wild bird species lay so few eggs per season that harvesting them at scale would collapse the population within just a few breeding cycles. Some species barely lay eggs worth the effort at all. A single hummingbird egg weighs less than a paperclip. Technically edible, practically pointless. The math simply never works in a kitchen. Chickens, by contrast, are almost absurdly efficient. A single hen can lay over 300 eggs a year, reaches maturity fast, needs relatively little space, and produces a shell strong enough to transport without shattering constantly in the process. It wasn't the tastiest egg that won. It wasn't even the safest egg that won. It was the most economically convenient one. Archaeologists estimate humans began domesticating chickens somewhere around 8,000 years ago in Southeast Asia. Not initially for eggs at all, but for meat and ritual purposes. The egg economy came later, almost as an accident of scale, once one species had already won the domestication race. By the time other eggs were even being considered, chickens already had thousands of years of head start, breeding programs, transport infrastructure, cultural familiarity. Trying to compete with that isn't a biological problem. It's an economic one, and economics rarely gets undone, which means the real boundary was never biological. It was never really about what your body can digest. It was about farming logistics, population sustainability, cultural exposure, and a few thousand years of momentum that turned one bird's eggs into the default and left everything else labeled as exotic, risky, or unthinkable. There are entire species whose eggs are perfectly edible, nutritionally rich, structurally identical in purpose, that most people will never eat in their lifetime. Not because biology forbids it, but because nobody ever built the supply chain for it. And that's worth sitting with for a second, because normal food feels like a fact of nature. It isn't. It's a few accidents of history, repeated so consistently that they stopped looking like choices at all. So the next time you crack an egg into a pan, consider what you're actually holding. Not the only edible egg on the planet, just the one history happened to scale. Somewhere out there, in a tide pool, a nest, or a jungle canopy, there's a perfectly good breakfast that never got the chance to become normal.